What would happen if Elon Musk died tomorrow? The question is asked, I think, legitimately by many Tesla fans and Tesla stockholders. What would happen to the company's endeavors and stock price if, by some misfortune, Elon Musk would die tomorrow? We're all human, and nobody's above a sudden death. Elon Musk himself came very close to that scenario when he went on his first honeymoon in South Africa. He then contracted a severe form of malaria that almost stripped him of his life. And this is important because if Tesla and all the other companies under it are so successful today, it is due to Elon's vision and to his involvement with the process. What we're talking about here is a very well-known risk factor called key man risk. This is when a business or a business unit relies too heavily on one or a particular group of individuals. And this is most frequently found within small and medium-sized companies, but there are a few examples of Fortune 500 companies where this was the case. I'm thinking of Steve Jobs with Apple, Richard Branson with Virgin, and Henry Ford with Ford Motor Company. All these people have one thing in common. Their personal values and vision had such a strong impact on the company's performance, we can hardly see the company existing without them. So how does a company or a business protect itself from key man risk? Well, there are four main strategies that you could rely on to protect yourself from this risk. Well, the first one is a classic. It's the insurance policy. This works just like how you could insure your car against all risks of daily life. It could work out as a life insurance policy or a business disability policy. So a company gets a lump sum if something ever happens to the key man, which gives it enough time to weather the storm and restructure the company according to the plan it hopefully thought of in the past. The second way is more of a prevention is better than cure kind of philosophy. Basically, you make sure through a bunch of policies that your key man is actually in good health, whether through a good health plan, enough downtime to wind down and take rest, or any other non-overbearing measure the business can take to maintain this person's health. Now these first two, they're the most obvious ones, and even the smallest companies, they have these policies adopted. The third one though is tougher to adopt because it requires resources that are not available to every company and aims for a goal that's more abstract but hopes to reach this goal through concrete business-like ideas. And we talked about this a bit in the first point, but it is to actually plan in advance for what you would do in case this happens. You have to have a robust business model where no one individual is exclusively in the know of the ins and outs of the business. You do this through defining roles, processes, and workflows. You automate workflows as much as possible, and you basically make sure that almost everybody is replaceable. Now, of course, this is easier said than done. If these people were replaceable, we wouldn't be talking about key man risk in the first place. And this is where the fourth strategy comes into place, which is basically the most important one out of the four. Culture. Now, culture is a classic corporate buzzword. Every soulless corporation loves to tell you about their culture and how they really dearly hold on to it. But when it comes to these disruptive companies, culture is actually really important for their goals. And so they define it in advance because these cultural values is the reason why the business is good in the first place. And that person that became the key man in the business, he became that way because of those values. So if you could teach those values to other people that join you further down the road, then maybe, just maybe, you could actually transmit that frame of thinking and make the business last longer than you do. So by relaying this vision, what you create is an environment where people who think similarly, but not exactly the same. So you get the same first principles, but each individual can bring up his own personal experiences to fine-tune these principles. And the result you get is a business that moves as a collective, but with each person adding on their little own flavor to the mix. Now, of course, Tesla is not the only company that ever had a key man in its business. We can think of other examples like Steve Jobs with Apple. And this is actually a good example because Steve Jobs had to leave the company twice, both in 1985 and in 2011. Let's first start with what happened in 1985. So I'm not going to go in detail over what exactly happened at Apple then, because many other people have done it and they did it in a much better quality than I'll ever do. But long story short, the Apple board wanted a mature CEO that would come in and act like the adult supervision for the bold and brash Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. And while at first they got along very well, Jobs and Scully eventually broke apart because they didn't agree on the business and how it should be run, etc. Jobs being Jobs, he decided to attempt a coup against Scully, but it didn't work and it led to him being banished and then resigning a year later. So in that situation, the very culture that made Apple's success and that was represented in Steve Jobs was seen as the enemy to the company's growth. And so it was quickly dropped for Scully's culture, which I don't have to remind you came from a very corporate Pepsi. Long story short, from 1985 to 1996, Apple went through 6 mature CEOs and the company lost all of its fizz. Finally, after years of trying to save what appears to be a 50,000-ton sinking ship, Steve Jobs was brought back as a consultant, and the rest is history. You already know what happened, one of the best corporate turnarounds of this century. Now, let's look at what happened in 2011 when Steve Jobs passed away. By then, it was clear that Steve's vision is actually what made the company grow. And although Tim Cook's leadership style is a lot more democratic than Steve Jobs was, he kept a lot of the same elements that Steve Jobs thought were important for the company. I'm thinking of putting people first, hiring smart people and empowering them, and taking time to get things right. All of these are values that Jobs lived by, and Apple continues to live by today. And so, many disruptive companies know how important culture is and have learned this lesson already. And Tesla is no different. If you've ever tried applying to a job at Tesla, you'll notice very early on what they're looking for. You need to be able to move fast, do the impossible, constantly innovate, reason for first principles, think like owners, and always have this we're all in mentality. Now, if this list doesn't sound like Elon Musk's behavior. And Tesla employees will tell you that this is exactly how they operate on a daily basis. So what will happen tomorrow if Elon Musk suddenly dies or gets abducted by aliens? Probably the same thing that happened with Apple in 2011. A Musk trustee from the board of directors, or the leadership column as listed on the Tesla corporate governance page, will take over the company, keeping the same culture alive, while adding her or his own flavor to the mix. And while trying to fill Elon's shoes is probably going to be an impossible task, all the people in this list have a very similar business vision as Elon. They all have the same vision of the company's future and the importance of its current diversification. So all things considered, yes, Tesla's stock will probably crash for a bit after Elon Musk's death is announced, and maybe, just maybe, it'll stop trading for ludicrous PE ratios, but the company will be just fine. And the stock will rebound once the frenzy is over and people realize that Tesla is more than just Elon Musk's tweets and memes.